Hello guys and welcome again to the channel. So we have now some of the deck which I kind of searching for in the modern format, and I've considered that maybe Mono Black might have some potential, even though that this format is very equipped with enough mana fix for even the 5 colors. But this time for our deck feature, we'll have the Mono Black Aggro, or the Mono Black kind of the deck, the Suicide Black deck by Higolso. So this was from the recent tournaments in MTG Online, and we'll see how it goes. That this kind of deck build has such a good, maybe a good setup for this meta game of the current modern format. So let's take a look at the rundown. So we have 5 artifacts, 18 creatures, 7 instants, 22 lands, and basically 25 with the double-faced cards, 1 planeswalker with the of Veil, and 7 sorcery. So let's take a look at the breakdown per card. Before we go to these artifact choices, let's check out the creatures as to why this is we consider as an aggro, because we have here a lot of 2-drops and some 3-drops to start off the gameplay. So if you are not yet familiar with the setup of this deck, it's basically just having an early discard spells followed by a 2-drop creature, and then more of the discard spells to follow and get value from it. And one of the particular creature which I'll say that has a very good way to benefit is this black version of your Tarmogoyf. So basically, Nethergoyf is a 1 mana cost Tarmo. Its condition of the power and toughness is equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard. So basically, it's a 1 mana cheaper than a regular Tarmo, and it also only considers your graveyard. But nevertheless, it's kind of on the curve with this deck, because of at least it can still have 2 or 3 card types in your graveyard before you can untap and attack with this creature. So that is 3 copies in the deck. Next up is 3 copies Confidant. So this one is recently standard legal and has been reprinted in the Final Fantasy set, but this build here is probably most suited because of the lack of cheap mana costs, which paying life would not be a problem for this deck. So we have 3 copies of that creature to get you those card advantage. Another card advantage creature here, which also became a regular before let's say the Rakdos evoke decks were banned, which is the Dothi Voidwalker. So Voidwalker is basically a 2 mana 3/2 shadow, which means that it can be black only with creatures with shadow, given that this metagame is particularly there's none other than maybe the Voidwalker as creatures with shadow. So basically it becomes unblockable, and if a card would be put into the opponent's graveyard from anywhere, that would be exiled with a void counter with the Dothi, and then you can use Voidwalker to choose an exiled card from the opponent owns with a void counter and cast it without paying its mana cost. So in any case, you can discard huge threat from your opponent through your Toss and use Voidwalker's ability to cast it for free. So that's why it's 4 copies in the deck, and making sure that you can still have a 3/2 attacker at the same time gets value in the late game. And for the other 2 drops here, it's August Masters. It's basically punishing and dealing damage to an opponent if they draw a card, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, and also gets you to amass an orc, or amass an orc token. So in a way, it's basically not only just a flashy attacker, but also gets you some extra damage of ping damage and also developing your board. And that for the last 2-drop here is a copy of Turak Dread Cantor. So this creature is a legendary human cleric which has protection from white but has a kicker 2, which basically making it a 4 mana cost for value. If enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, target opponent discard 2 cards at random. So it's a him to Turak effect, and also When opponent discards a card, put up a summon counter on Torak Dead Captor. So basically, with your discard effects and all of your early 1 mana cost discard spells would get you to value to pop up Torak, and also making him protection white means that most of the white-based spot removal in the metagame would not be able to kill this creature or get rid of it. And for the 3-drops, before here, with Bogart Troller's kind of utility creature, we discussed first Graveyard Trespasser. So, Trespasser is basically from the initial Midnight Hunt. It is also a popular Pioneer creature. And here, also in the modern, it gets some value because of having also a 3/3 ward with desire card and can exile cards from graveyards. Is also a good way to you to get some value. And at the same time, if you're able to flip this into Glutton, then you get a 4/4 creature that also can exile up to 2 target cards from graveyards. So whenever it attacks, at the same time it gets some drain effect if creature cards were exiled this way. So that is 2 copies in the deck. And before the Bogart, you can see here that it is only, not only a creature but also can be used as a playland for pay 3 life to enter it untap. But the purpose here is exiling graveyards. We know that the metagame of Modern has a lot of graveyard shenanigans, particularly Reanimator decks, Glorious Vengeance. So you need also ways to exile them and do some basically denying them of their effects. And also delirium effects would also be exiled by answered by the Troller. And the 1-of copy for the 4-drop is Shoulder Apocalypse. Of course, punishing card draws would mean that forever every draw card they will lose 2 life, and at the same time for you, whenever you draw a card, you would also gain 2 life. As an effect, for damage raise would be kind of hard for your opponents to answer. Now, before we discuss, we skip to the parts where we need some spot removals. So Fatal Push would be your best 1 mana costs kill here because it triggers also Revolt, basically having to deal with the creatures with mana value 4 or less. And in the metagame, of course, most of the creatures are below that value. And also 2 copies of Dismember. It can be cast for 1 mana cost, just pay 2 or pay 4 life for the paying for the mana correction mana symbol, and have Dragon creature gets -5/-5. And lastly, Fail the Profane for a flip card spot removal of destroying Planeswalker or creature. And for the discard, we have in the form of Thoughtseize. Of course, this is the best 1 mana discard spell in the format, and not only given in the Pioneer but also here. And we also have 2 copies of Inquisition of Kozilek, which is also efficient because most of the non-land cards are mana value 2 or less, so you would hit mostly all of them and that value. And also this Agadem Awakening is a utility card which still can be used as a land drop, but in the late game instance you can return cards from your graveyard where each value of X that is paid on a different cost. And other discard spell effect here is Liana of the Veil. You know that Liana is basically a modern favorite in the past, but since it has reprinted in standard, it has come become like one of the staple, but not too powerful. But I think in this build, you would have this as a good utility card for you to use. So each player discards a card, or target player sacrifices a creature, and good value later on to separate the permanents of your opponents into 2 piles and sacrifice half of them. Now, why would we use these artifacts, these 1-offs? Because of this specific card, Ursa Saga. But we know that this card is very, very popular in the metagame because of this having only a 1 drop. It is also an enchantment land. It can add mana. It can also create this construct, but also gets you to search an artifact card with mana cost 0 or 1 and put it in the battlefield. So what are your options here? Let's check. We have Nihil Spellbomb. For your shenanigans, you can have this as your good removal. It can also get you to draw a card if you pay 1 black. A copy of Pitting Needle, which also can name a card and activate abilities or sources of the chosen card or card name would not be activated unless they are mana abilities. And of course, Shadow Spear, which also gets your creature +1/+1 trample and lifelink, which is relevant in maybe in the matchups against Prowess, against aggro decks that has a lot of burn spells, wherein lifelink is also essential. And the bonus also is that permanent your opponent's control loses hexproof indecisible with this kind of effect, and also makes your fatal pushes very efficient in those certain scenarios. And also a bonus, 2 copies of Mishra's Bubble. This just also gets you some card effects, and also satisfies Necrobwife's condition to have an artifact card in your graveyard to get him to pump for 1 more power and toughness. And for the lands, aside from of course the saga as mentioned, we have some of the ramp, or I mean the fetch lands to kind of shuffle up for basic, so you can still use this to fetch a basic swamp, and also some of the utility cards in the form of Protection Tower that is sacrificing a creature and adding 1 mana. We also have Spy Master's Bolt, that is another copy, so this card would get you to have your creature connive X, where X the number of creatures that die this turn, so that's a bonus effect. We also have Takenuma, which can return a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand with this effect after milling 3 cards. And Mishra's Factory, which also can become an attacker in the form of a 2/2 assembly worker artifact creature token until end of turn. And lastly, some also of the fix, having a swamp for each of those land types would also be very important. So we have Orborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth for 2 copies in the deck to make these non-producing lands into swamps. So that's a total of 22 lands, plus the 3 double-faced cards would make it a total of 25 lands in the deck. Now let's take a look at the mana value. We don't need its mono color, so it's surprisingly 1.76. So you can see here that you can just curve early on with some Tossises into a Dark Confidant and a Voidwalker and the Orchestra's Master, and you can just go all the way to attack your opponent with those creatures, while also backing up with fatal pushes and more discard effects. So very basic for this deck. Let's take a look at the tokens. Do we have tokens? We only have 2 tokens, the Construct token and the Orc Army token from the Bowmaster. So I think that's pretty much for this deck feature for Mono Black Aggro. If you have yet to find a way to do some grinding for the modern format, I would suggest this kind of deck build, as it would only stick for one particular color. You would not need to worry about having to mana screw or use a lot of fetches for the dual colors to fix and to add to this deck. You can just go particularly straightforward with the discard effects, having some cheap creatures that synergizes with the discard card value, and also the late game of Liliana, while also having some utility component with the Ursa Saga. So I think that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for checking this one. We have again the Mono Black Aggro by Eagle Soul for the modern format. Don't forget to subscribe. We still have more discussion following in the future next videos for the modern metagame, some deck features and such. So don't forget to notify on for this one. Thank you guys for watching, and see you on the next video.